Hello. It's Anissa from Infinite Blackness, and I'm doing my January 2025 wrap up. And I don't think that I talked about this, but my goal for this year is my reading goals are to. Why do I hear myself? My reading goals are to have at least 50% of my books be by Black authors and to read at least one book every month by an Indigenous author. So far, I have done that. So for January, I read 9 books, and um, 7 of those were by Black authors, and then one Indigenous author, and then one white author. So of the 9 books, I own one of them, and so I'll just kind of go over. So I don't have all of them with me, but I'll just go over what I read and how it went. It was a good year. I think the reason why I did 9, I usually don't read that many novels in one month, but because I was off for the holidays. So the first book I read in January was called The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and you probably heard a lot about it. It's nonfiction. He traveled to Africa. I can't remember which, I want to say Senegal, but that might be wrong, to South Carolina, I believe, and then to Palestine. And he talks about colonialism, he talks about book banning, and he talks about the Palestinians' apartheid, basically. Just one quote, just to kind of let you know what kind of book we're dealing with here. I think this tradition of writing, of drawing out a common humanity, is indispensable to our future, if only because what must be cultivated and cared for must first be seen. So this, enjoyed it. Nice and short. Recommend it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Next for my Black authors was Ghost Roots, which is a short story collection by Pemi Aguda, and I listened to it on audiobook. It was on the long list for the National Book Award. It did not make the short list. The author is African, I want to say Nigerian, and all of the stories take place in Nigeria and kind of have this speculative, supernatural little vibe to them. Um, Family is a strong theme. Children's relationships with different authority figures is a strong theme. So some of the stories were, one of them was about a girl who was a house servant, and I guess you sign up for like 2 years, and you don't get paid very much money, but I think it all goes to your parents. And so she was away from her family, and she basically got kidnapped by someone else who wanted to have a daughter. So that was kind of interesting. There was another story where all of the boys were getting sick and dying of a fever in one certain neighborhood. So everybody kept dying, and so there's some things that they try to do to protect their own sons. So I enjoyed it. It was good on audio. I thought the narrator was good, and I thought they were very interesting stories. Next is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. She's a very well known British author of romance genre, and this was a YA romance. It was lovely as usual. Somebody on Goodreads described Talia's books as having a lot of heart, horniness, and humor, and I think that is her to a T. The spice levels, not too bad because this is a YA book, but there's still a little bit of spice, and it was just good. I enjoyed it. Next is Small Joys by Elvin James Mensah. He is also a British author, and his book was about a queer black man in Britain who leaves school. He basically is depressed and leaves school and is thinking about harming himself, and happens upon this person who they end up becoming very, very good friends, and that really kind of saves him from well, he works out his depression and other things that he has going on with this kind of newfound family. So, a very strong theme of found family. The book was really good. I enjoyed it. I really enjoy novels that are about Black life, that aren't about Black trauma necessarily. Like, you can have the trauma of living, but the Black trauma, like the lynchings and the violence and discrimination, it's hard to read. I will read it, but I like to have just like slices of Black life. And so I really enjoyed this book. I thought I did that very well. Um, the friend that he has is, it's a wonderful book, and I love the friend. Like, he's a good character, he's well done. Uh, and I think it's unbelievable that somebody like that would exist in real life. Like, he's perfect, and he never leaves this person. Um, but having said that, I thought it was a really good book. Okay, next is Immortal Dark by Tigist Gurma. She is of Ethiopian descent and she's living in Australia now. And this is a fantasy about Black vampires. She says that she took Ethiopian myths and legends and blended them into this book. I enjoyed it. It was fantasy, it had some romance in it. The part that I liked the best was about the kind of relationship between the human and the vampire. And there's also dark academia vibes in there. The fantasy part of it, I would say it's not badly done. The writing is good. Um, you do care about the characters. There's a plot. The There was a lot going on, and I think for me, like, I just didn't care enough about all the little twists and turns and extra groups. Um, so so it was a 400-page book, and I really liked the vampire part, and I really liked the part about the relationship between them two. And then there was a lot of other stuff, and I was like, yeah, we can just, I can fly through this. This is a first book in a trilogy. I have to decide if I'm going to read the other one because I did really like the relationship. Okay, next is Intercepted by Alexa Martin. This is a football NFL romance. She's been on my radar for a really long time. Took me a really long time to read her, but I read this one. Very nice and fluffy romance between a quarterback and somebody, and good, like, not bad. I will, it's kind of light and fluffy. It was, maybe a little bit too light and too fluffy for me. Um, However, I mean, it was enjoyable to read. I think I thought the author is a NFL wife. Like, her husband was in the NFL for 8 years. And so I was expecting a little bit more, like, not necessarily, of course, like, you don't necessarily have to like the NFL, but I thought there would be some other, like, underground secret type stuff that you would only be able to talk about because you'd been in the NFL or adjacent involved with the NFL. And I didn't really get that from this book. Like, the only thing I think was, like, they all wait for the players in the family room after the game. Um, and I was kind of like, that's it. Like, everything else was, the NFL, and the fact that he was a quarterback was just kind of this backdrop. He spent a lot of time, like, walking here and there and going to her house. And I'm like, if you're an NFL quarterback, like, I don't know how much you can just walk around town. Like, she just lived in a normal neighborhood without getting mobbed. And then also, he didn't really seem to care very much about how things were going with the season, which I find hard to believe. They were trying to make the playoffs, and he got hurt while he was ice skating with her, and he was just like, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. But anyway, the romance was great. I've just been really wanting, like, fluffy, cozy, just feel good vibes. So I think both of the romances hit that very well. And then my last book that I read by a Black author this month, is called Redwood Court. And I do have that one, and that's by Delana R.A. Dameron. And this is kind of a slice of life book. So it's basically just following this family. It just kind of plops you in when one of the main couples are, meeting, and just follows some of their offspring and their, grandkids. And it was just good. There was some Goodreads critical feedback where there was no real plot. And for me, I was fine with that. Like the plot to me was like just the family and like everything. They lived in South Carolina, and it was kind of, living in the time period that they were at, which was, like recent and then back a couple of generations. And so it just talked about Black life. And, that's kind of what I'm looking for. It had the realities of living in America as a Black family, but it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't the focal point of the story. The focal point of the story was this family, and it was really about like resilience and community and love. And I was just here for it. Like I really enjoyed it. So Redwood Court by Delana R.A. Dameron. I would recommend it. And then the indigenous book, the book by an indigenous author that I read is called By the Fire We Carry by Rebecca Nagel. And it's talking about a murder that happened on Indian land. And basically, they used that to reaffirm that the area that they were in was actually Indian territory, because there was a lot of debate about whether that was true or not. And so this book really examines the history of the Cherokee and the Muskogee nations and the Trail of Tears, and then also allotment. There's all sorts of stuff going on, but it was very, looking from this trial really gave you a way to look at the history of indigenous people and especially the area in those nations. So that was really good. And then the last book I read was called Margot Thorpe's Got Money Troubles, I believe is what it's called. Or maybe just Margot's Got Money Troubles. Let me see. Yes, Margot's Got Money Troubles by Ruthie Thorpe. Oh, and this was by Rebecca Nagel, by the way. And that was good. It was funny. It was about a girl who's in college, and she basically gets pregnant by her professor, and just what she does, she keeps the baby and just trying to make ends meet. So that was January. So hopefully we'll see how February goes. I have a bunch of library books, and I am going to buy some more books, and I own a bunch of books, so I'll be doing a bunch of reading. So take care and have a good one. Keep yourself cozy. Do something fun for yourself. Bye bye.